Welcome to the 7th episode of Why It's Awesome, the spoiler-free show where we attempt to take something often easily dismissed and explain why maybe you should give it a shot. The intention with this series is to help new fans find something they'll enjoy that initially they might have passed over, or so that people who are already fans can pass this video on to their friends to persuade them to give the subject in question a go. This week, I'll be looking at a request we got over on Twitter for PWG, or uncondensed, Pro Wrestling Guerilla. This is a wrestling promotion that I've been a massive fan of for a number of years, so I'm more than happy to oblige with your request, Viva la Meathead. So, with that out of the way, let's start, as we always do, with what could be some common reasons for dismissal, this time divided into whether or not you are already a wrestling fan. People who aren't fans of this type of entertainment may state, what is PWG? Why should I care? Who are these people? What's up with the production values, and how do I watch it? For those who are already wrestling fans, reasons for dismissal are usually across the lines of PWG is nothing but a bunch of spot monkeys. So, for the uninitiated, PWG is an American wrestling promotion founded in 2003 and based in Reseda, California. However, PWG is not just your normal independent wrestling promotion. So, quick aside in case you know absolutely nothing about wrestling, independent promotions are those which are smaller than the major televised promotions, usually operating out of community halls or theatre venues. A major wrestling promotion would be something like WWE. Typically, and there are many exceptions to this rule, but typically, the major promotions have the most talented wrestlers on their roster, so there's a bit of a stereotype attached to the independent wrestling promotions, or the indies, that their shows won't be as good as the major wrestling promotions because their wrestlers aren't as good. So, why should you care? Because PWG is one, if not the biggest exception to this. At any one time, PWG will have on its roster and its shows some of the world's most talented wrestlers, but it goes further than just that because the promotion seems to actively encourage wrestlers to let loose with whatever crazy ass match ideas that they can come up with. There doesn't seem to be any restrictions on what they allow their wrestlers to do. Want to start a match by diving over the top rope as your opponent is making their entrance? Go for it. Want to miss a double moonsault from the top rope? Alright. Want to super kick your opponent in the face with a shoe covered in thumbtacks? Well, is your opponent alright with it? Well then yeah, try not to kill her. But it gets even better than that. Because of the seemingly limited amount of restrictions PWG puts on its wrestlers, they're also allowed to have a ridiculous amount of fun. Some of the funniest moments I've ever seen have been watching PWG. Want to have a 2-minute part of your 4v4 tag team match where everybody wrestles in slow motion? Hell yeah! Want to just stop wrestling for a little bit and instead have a running the ropes contest followed up by a sing-along? Well, of course you do. Want to see a bunch of grown men react to a make-believe grenade? Well then there you go. PWG allows these supremely talented wrestlers it books to do what they do best, wrestle supremely well, and sometimes it is just unbelievable. Not to mention that at this point, it's all but official that major promotions use PWG as a bit of a proving ground to look for people to sign. Look no further than Kevin's I beat John Cena in my first match in WWE Owens, who attributes his signing there with PWG. He's gone on record to say that William Regal watched one of his matches there, and it was because of that match he was asked to be part of a tryout camp, which eventually led to his signing. WWE and NXT names like Kevin Owens, Cesaro, Adrian Neville, Sami Zayn, Solomon Crowe, Kalisto, Daniel, I had an entire WrestleMania based around my underdog story Bryan, and Seth, I'm currently holding 2 goddamn championships Rollins, have all had varying levels of affiliation with PWG, with Bryan and Rollins both holding gold in the company. Which is not to say that the people currently in PWG, those that haven't been signed by major promotions, are bad, because they're not. They are world-class athletes and top-tier entertainers. Quick aside because of that last sentence, some of the people who frequently wrestle with PWG are in fact signed with major promotions. Those promotions simply allow those wrestlers to perform in both their company and PWG. Okay, so the point I'm making here is that perhaps you haven't heard of a lot of these wrestlers: Chris Hero, Trevor Lee, The Young Bucks, Ricochet, Brian Cage, Roderick Strong, Candice LeRae, Joey Ryan, etc, and you're not really prepared to give it a chance because of that. Well, if you consider yourself to be a wrestling fan, you should give this a shot, and you should care because this is where some of the most talented wrestlers in the world today have had some of their best matches. And if you don't consider yourself to be a wrestling fan, you should care because look at this. Have you seen the footage that I've been talking over? You will not see this level of athleticism and blatant disregard for one's own health anywhere else in the world. In addition to all that, PWG, without any exaggeration or hyperbole on my part, probably boasts the world's best performance atmosphere. You know what's better than wrestlers performing in slow motion? The crowd they are performing for chanting "This is awesome" at them in slow motion. And that's just one small example of the kind of stuff the PWG crowd does every show. I unfortunately can only relay stories and second-hand information about what actually being in the crowd feels like, as I have yet to make it to see a PWG show, but from every account on the topic I have seen, every wrestler that has performed in PWG praises the level of passion and enthusiasm the crowd brings to each show, and that shines through when watching from home. The crowd reactions and chants really make for a unique viewing experience that no other wrestling promotion can boast. Okay, so bringing the level down for just a moment, let's move on to a couple of problems the promotion has for anyone living outside of Reseda. Firstly, the production values. So, PWG has a fairly basic setup for recording their shows. They have one hard camera that's positioned to view the entire ring, and then one or two handheld cameras operated at ringside to get better action shots. If you are used to the major promotions and their level of production values, well then yes, this will be a considerable step down. However, as I've spent the rest of the review stating, the actual substance of each show, the important part, the wrestling, is top notch. So to me, it's not much of a problem. It doesn't diminish the overall product or prohibit my enjoyment of the promotion. So, maybe you like what you've heard and are actually wanting to give PWG a try. Well, there we run into one small hurdle, actually watching the bloody thing. Outside of travelling to Reseda for every show, the only way to watch PWG is to buy their DVDs over at ProWrestlingGuerilla.com, and in today's age of instant streaming, that can be a bit of a pain, especially if, like me, you enjoy being surprised by the shows and attempt to avoid spoilers. Because the time between the show actually happening and the DVDs getting made and delivered can seem like an eternity. Although, I can very safely say that I have never once regretted that wait. The shows are always a phenomenal viewing experience, highlighting some of the best wrestlers the world has to offer. But maybe you knew all of that. You're a fan of wrestling, you know what PWG is, and you know that it's just too many super kicks and a bunch of flippy shit. Well, yeah, okay, I will concede that there is a lot of that, but there is a hell of a lot more to PWG than just that. PWG typically contains an incredible variety of different styles and matches, and that's just what happens when you showcase as much talent as PWG does. On any typical card, any desire you have to see in a wrestling match is usually catered for. You like flippy shit and super kicks? Well, Ricochet and the Young Bucks have you covered. You prefer very technically impressive submission-based wrestling? Zack Sabre Jr., step up to the plate. You prefer your wrestling to look more like a fight with brutal-looking strikes and kicks? Well, Chris Hero and Biff Busick are there for you. Even if you like weapons and blood, PWG does like to break out the occasional guerrilla warfare match, so there's something for you as well. There's much more variety in a PWG show than I typically see talked about when discussing the promotion. I genuinely believe that there's something for everyone to enjoy here. All you have to do is be willing to give it a shot. I'm sure you won't be disappointed. So that's it for another episode. What did you guys think? Did you enjoy this video? Let me know with a like, and if you'd like to see more, feel free to hit that subscribe button. Is there something you love that other people just don't seem to get that you might want me to look into and make a video about? Let me know in the comments. And as always, do you like PWG? Do you dislike it? And why? What is it about the promotion that makes you feel that way? Leave a comment to start a discussion, and as always, thanks for watching.